I got these two great tennis players. All we need is a club. Everything to go from prodigy to pro. Raise your hand, Serena. Venus Williams.
You two play Venus and Serena. Did you know their story before? How did you prepare for this job?
I really didn't know much. I knew about who they are today and what they've become, but I didn't know what it took for them to get to this point, and I didn't know how involved their entire family was. To prepare for this role, I did a lot of research. I went on the internet and found as many videos as I could find of Serena and Venus and the whole family, just to kind of see how they interacted with each other and how they were with one another.
For me, I did a lot of research as well, watching film of their matches over the years, because tennis is a part of them. So a lot of things that they created are from when they created it when they were kids. But I loved watching film from when they were with their family, because how they were back then is how they are now. They love each other so much, which I think is so important, and we portrayed it pretty well in the film, which meant so much to us and meant so much to them.
Yeah, we can see the love. So there's a scene where Richard says that they can represent all Black girls. You, not as actresses, as people, were you also inspired by their story?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. Serena and Venus are two women that I've looked up to my entire life.
Exactly.
Before King Richard, I wasn't really a big tennis fan. I didn't understand the sport. It wasn't something that I was into. But with that being said, I've always loved Serena and Venus. Just apart from the tennis, I've always loved them because of who they are and how dedicated they are to what they do, how much they inspire people to just keep going.
They're so humble, which means so much to me. Something that Richard always said was to make sure they always had fun, and what they did was so much fun for them. But that could have definitely put pressure on them. But I love how they tried so hard to make sure that pressure didn't apply to them. But Venus opened so many doors for girls like us, and all we have to do is just walk through it. Maybe run a little, but walk through and go out there and just conquer whatever we want to do.
So what was it like working with Will Smith?
Oh my goodness.
Working with Mr. Will was just amazing. It was awesome. I mean, Mr. Will is a really important person in Hollywood, and he's accomplished so much in his career and has inspired so many people. But just by the way he speaks to you and how he acknowledges everyone, you would just think he's like any other person, like he's just a normal guy. He's just a genuinely great person to be around.
He's so sweet and has such a big heart. I loved how he made a relationship with everybody on set. So loving, and we were all a family, from the people behind the camera and in front.
This next step you about to take, you're not gonna just be representing you're gonna be representing every little Black girl on earth.
Will's a G, man. I say it like the guy's incredible, but that dude works so hard, man. It's like it's not made up. He really, really, really works hard, and he just has an incredible way to disarm everybody of him being Will Smith, and he's just able to make you feel comfortable and at ease. And that went with all the cast. He's very generous. He knows if the energy's a little low, when to tell a joke or when to pass gas. He knows when to lighten things up, and that's Will. He's constantly making things feel alive. Will had an incredible supporting cast. Ingenue, to be in a scene with her, to be in a scene with John Bernthal and Tony Goldwyn and Sanaya Sidney and Demi Singleton, it just made all those scenes much richer. And Will had great people to play with. That's where magic happens, when there's chemistry within those scenes. And so we built a family. Having LeBron James on your team only helps you be great, but LeBron has to pass the ball, and he knows that. He can't score every point in the basketball. That's what makes a great player, is the ability to pass the ball.
This is their life. You gotta let them decide.
Yeah, baby, yeah!
These girls so great, how come I've never heard of them?
They're from Compton.
You play Venus and Serena's mom. Can you tell us a little bit about her?
She was their coach. I know that most people don't know that that's who she was to her daughters, that she was, of course, this devoted, doting mother, but she was also their coach as well, and she trained herself to be their coach.
So many times we see people at the top and cannot imagine what they did until they got there. So how was it for you then to dive into this story?
What I wanted to do was be a voice for Miss Oracene, but I also wanted to be an advocate for her, but women like her who are in the shadows, and we'd have no idea how extraordinary what they're doing is because they don't get the credit for it. It's just what happens with women. When these stories are often told about, these heroic male characters, and you see the women in their lives, you see a couple scenes and you know what I mean? And it feels like a little lip service done to that part of the story. But I hope that we did more than that. We gave a fuller version of that kind of narrative and how we portrayed Miss Oracene. I hope one that's full and one that's whole and one that honors her in the way that she deserves to be honored, and so many women like her.
So the movie makes us think a lot about the expectations parents have of their children. At some point, your character says it's their life. You have to let them decide. So do you think that is also a message for the audience?
It's just such a brilliant approach to parenting. Of course, they push them, but they also insisted that they have real childhoods. They allowed them to make decisions about themselves. And I think one of the reasons that we see the longevity of Venus and Serena now is because those choices were made by their parents then.
Watch them hit a few balls.
All right.
So tell me your names again.
I'm Venus.
I'm Serena.
You play the girls' coach. Did you have to learn how to play tennis?
Not completely. I was pretty rusty. I grew up playing tennis, but I sort of had dropped it in my 20s. So when they asked me to do the film, I said, of course I play tennis. And then I had to go run out and get a coach immediately and play every day to get into shape.
What was the importance of the first coach in their career?
Paul Cohen, who's the character that I play, there was a certain point Richard Williams, Will Smith's character, had this vision of creating these tennis players in his two daughters, and there was only so far he could take them because he wasn't a tennis player. So he then sought out the absolute top level coaches in Southern California, which is where they were living. And he found Paul Cohen, who was John McEnroe's coach. And Paul really professionalized their game. He really taught them very specific coaching style and technique. He clashed with Richard a lot because Richard had very strong opinions of what he thought the girls should be doing. But they had actually a really great relationship, and it was very playful and a lot of mutual respect. Richard was a handful, but I think Paul had an important impact because it really gave them skills that they didn't have yet.
How can Richard's story can inspire people who watch the movie?
Richard Williams was a guy who grew up under incredibly difficult circumstances in a deeply racist environment and struggled with obstacles himself that, few of us could overcome. He was always a guy who mapped out his future. He had a vision and a plan about what he was going to do, and then he set out to do it. Against impossible odds, they did it, but they did it as a family. And it wasn't just about reaching the goal. It was about building the character of these two young women and teaching them that they could do whatever they set their minds to. Having a dream and just pursuing it relentlessly.
Do you think that the movie can also have a message about children and sports?
What this movie says about children and sports is also really important. Paul Cohen and Richard really put their emphasis on nurturing these athletes, and they actually came to some conflict because Paul wanted to, put them in the system of making them elite athletes and competitive. And Richard was incredibly protective over his daughters and only wanted them to do it if they thought it was fun and they wanted to do it, and to be coming from a place of joy for them in the game, and that was what was going to make them achieve. I think too often in children's sports, we get so fixated on winning at all costs that it can burn kids out and become a very negative experience for them.
So what'd you think?
Sometimes the directors direct stories about, books or something. When we talk about a real story, is that so different?
Yeah, you're depicting real lives, and anytime you're dealing with real people's lives, you want to honor that the best you can, but you have limitations. You have a running time of a movie, and by virtue of that, you have to make choices. You have to make choices of what to keep and what to leave out. You learn so much about this family that just makes you love them more. And so when I heard those stories, that was where I was leaning in. It was like, man, now that's a movie. Like that's a movie to me, because it's something I don't know. It gives me a reason to have an experience at the theater, but it takes a lot of time and commitment. Hopefully you feel the passion that goes into it. Hopefully you feel, the nuance and the complexity of some of the characters and the situations.
Great. Did you have any help of them? Serena and Venus.
I was fortunate to meet Orsine. I was fortunate to meet Venus and Serena and ask them questions about their father. Ask them questions about what it was like growing up in that house. Like, tell me the real stuff. Like, come on, I know, like, tell me the real stuff. And like, it was great. Like everybody had a different, memory, and that's human, right? Like, you remember what you were wearing, and she was like, you weren't wearing pink, I was wearing blue. Like everybody's memories is kind of different and fuzzy from the time you're 8 and 9 years old, and you have these like vignettes and their moments, but the common through line was like how much love and commitment that both Richard and Orsine gave to those girls. I had a lot of fun doing it. I hope they can feel that we tried to honor the best we could.
Venus and Serena gonna shake up this world.